koutou. Ai, kupu tuatahi. Tēnā koe, Patricia. Tēnā koe I tāna e te whakarangatire I tāmatau. I tā tātou hui. I te mātaki au I a koe tēnei rā. Whakarongo ai ki a ngā kōrero I te tīmatanga o te rā. I mātaki au I a koe e whakarongo ana I te mutunga o te rā. Me I reira tonu koe e ā ta whakarongo ki. E ā ta whakarongo ana ki ngā kōrero tēnei te muhi. E te mare kura tēnā koe. Kia koutou hoki ngā ringa tuhi. Tēnā koutou. Nā koutou hoki tātātou hui I hiki, I hāpai, I whakatairanga. Tēnā rā koutou. And now to the health and safety briefing. Which has been quite the highlight of my week, I have to say. Well, setting this aside, of course, should there be a siren for us to evacuate, if you would all just kindly and calmly step aside for me to go first. And then bolt for the doors. The gathering place is in the car park on the other side of the street, that way, I believe. Tēnā, he rawinga heke tua o tēnei wāhi. They're very lovely, beautifully maintained toilets here, and they're just out the door to the right. You're all writers, so you're all readers as well, but just in case there are pictures of a boy and a girl. As with all our other events, we have been careful to be thankful to our sponsors who took a punt. On an occasion like this, being the first of a potential series of events, it's not easy to find funding. So I'm going to read a little list of the people who have been some of the sponsors, and they took a punt on our event, and we are forever grateful. They are Creative New Zealand, McLeod's Booksellers, One Foundation, Rotorua Trust, Te Arawhiti, Te Tau o Te Arawa, Rotorua Reurua Tēnā rā koutou, e taru. And just so that you know that here in Te Arawa, you know we are well on the way to decolonisation and re-indigenisation. We also have, as part of our sponsors, Ngāti Whakau Education Endowment Fund. Lest you not be sure of the order of events for this evening, so you have arrived, so I've ticked that off. I trust that you find something to nibble on at your tables. Do not panic if your wine runs out. We are keeping an eye on it. We will refill it. If you want other drinks other than the wine on the table, there is a very well-equipped bar just out there, and I think some of you may have visited it already. Well done. Shortly, we will have Karina and Casey, and their presentation will, as we expect at a Māori function, be complemented by singing, and that will be provided by Tūhaurangi Kapahaka. That's a treat, ladies and gentlemen. Following that, we will have the main buffet where you will get your food from over there. The dessert will not be there because that will be a little later. After the buffet, we will have a special announcement and we will address the presence of this very elegant piece over here. We will talk about that later. We will have an auction. So do have discussions amongst yourselves about emptying your piggy banks. And then we will have dessert. So, about to present to you our speakers of the evening. In the dawn of our event, we had Ngā Huia Te Awe Kōtuku kick things off, and I think it was quite appropriate that we have such a senior member of the writing fraternity. And I say senior because I'm not sure that anybody else had anything published before her. She did tell us that she published when she was 7. It is unlikely that any of you published before her. And it is so very fitting, I think, that we finish with emerging writers who are rather diligent in getting books out. However, it would be silly of me to presume that you do not know who our speakers are, or you are not familiar with their work. If you are one of the 5 million who have never heard of Karina and Casey, sorry about it. I shall not try to introduce them because you are already so familiar with their work. Nō reira kōrua, nau mai rā.
Matariki hunganui, matariki ahunganui, te mātahi o te tau, te kohinga whetū i te umo ranginui, e piatata mai ana, e whakaata te rangi, e tohu ana i te tauhou Māori e. Tuia i runga, tuia i raro, tuia i roto, tuia i waho, tuia te heringa tangata, tuia te rangi ki te whenua ki te rangi, ti hei mauri ora. Tēnei rā te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa kua whai wā ki te tae mai raro i te tuanui o tō tātou whare. Nō māua te maringa nui ki te tui mui a koutou katoa. I tētahi o māua kāinga ko Rotorua. He hokinga mahara o koutou kanohi. E koana o māua ngākau ki te kiti i o koutou āhua i te pōnei, nō reira tēnā koutou katoa. It's a great honour for Casey and I to be invited to speak here this evening when we were invited by the Kupu festival to be speakers here. It was a huge honour. There have been some incredible speakers throughout the week and people that we have looked up to as long as we can remember. We were lucky we have our uncle Manu Bird who worked at Huia Publishing. It's my mother's brother. So we were fortunate to grow up with somebody who worked in the publishing industry, and we were read the books that he had written and translated. They were published by Huia Publishing, so it's a real honour to carry on that legacy of creating books. It's also a very proud moment for us to stand up here at Rotorua. Our grandparents lived down in Ohinematu. And so it's nice to be able to come back and mihi to everybody who has supported us along the way of our journey. When Casey and I were putting together our presentation, we thought, oh, what can we say that's going to stand up alongside some of the amazing writers who have spoken this week. And all we can do is tell our story and our journey through our career so far. We've put together a little presentation to help us along the way so we don't forget anything. Casey, would you like to say anything before we begin?
I think I'll start with, we definitely didn't start writing books when we were 7.
No.
So, me timata?
Yes. Again, enter again to play the video. I ate a lot of food in my lifetime. I've eaten a lot of food in my lifetime.
You can't tell.
So that was just a little snippet of the experiences, some of the experiences we've had so far in our career, but we thought it best to go back to the beginning with our upbringing in Maketu. these are just a few of the childhood photos of Casey and I, and our sister Michaela is there as well. Our papa Peter Bird in the bottom corner. So yeah, we had a great childhood in Maketu. It was a place where people would drop off pipi and fish and go hunting and drop deer off at your doorstep. So we always knew where our food came from, and we didn't know how lucky we were until we left Maketu and had to start paying for crayfish and paiwa. So yeah, we had a very blessed childhood, and we're very fortunate to have grown up the way that we did.
Yeah, we can't forget also beautiful baking dropped off by Auntie Y in Maketu all the time.
Yes.
Who's here this evening. I think for us, we had a really awesome childhood with lots of kai. Our whānau would have potluck dinners every Sunday with all of our whānau friends who would come with all of this amazing kai. And for Karina and I, the first thing we would go to is something we hadn't seen before.
Yes.
So we're always really curious when it comes to food.
Definitely. And so growing up, in our whānau, becoming a chef. Oh yeah, please eat the kai in front of you as well. Honestly, I would not want to stop you. Also, just a side note, some people think that we have cooked the kai here this evening. Although I'd love to take credit, we did not. So, kia mohi ai koutou. Yeah, so growing up, Casey and I loved food. We had great cooks in our whānau. My mum's side of the whānau from Waima Hokianga, they would say that we get our cooking prowess from that side of the whānau. But then my nana Matty would have something else to say about that. So I think we're blessed on both sides of our whakapapa, fortunately, in terms of, growing up around manaakitanga and, entertaining guests and things. So growing up, yeah, we loved food. Casey and I moved away to Wellington. Casey moved to Melbourne. Every time we spoke, we weren't speaking about what we were studying. It was always about which restaurants we had been to, what we were eating, where we wanted.
What TV shows we'd been watching about cooking, and yeah, all of our kōrero was around kai, and we were so obsessive about it.
Yeah, and it's strange to think back, and it was like thinking back now, it's really obvious that food was a passion of ours and we should have pursued that.
Yeah, so when we were in high school, what we'd do is we'd save up all of our pocket money from doing jobs or whatever it was, and would use that money and would drive up to Auckland to go and eat at restaurants as like 16, 17-year-olds from Maketu. So we'd look up the best restaurants in Auckland, pull up, and they would be like, who are these young brown chicks in Auckland at this restaurant? And we'd be getting, as much kai as we could try, and then we'd go back to Maketu and try and recreate that food we had tried. And obviously, that's pretty obvious that, maybe you should look into doing something with kai, but we hadn't quite figured that out then.
So, like, the period before we went on MasterChef, we had all moved back to Maketu, so I was living in my house, our mum and dad live across the road in the cul-de-sac, Casey lived next door to me, and our other sister Michaela lived just down the road, and we take turns cooking dinner every night. So my mum would be on a Monday, Michaela Tuesday, Casey Wednesday, I'd cook on Thursday, Friday and Saturday would go out, and Sunday would be like a big potluck dinner. But in most Māori whānau, it became competitive, so everyone was trying to one-up the person who was going to cook the next night, and we were just cooking and having fun, and it was just a hobby at that stage. And we were just sitting at home watching Ratatouille, the animated rat who cooks one day, and the application for MasterChef popped up on our Facebook feed, and luckily for us it was MasterChef Duos. So Casey and I filled out the entry form, sent it away. 2 days later we got a call back from the production team saying that they wanted to come and do the next interview. Casey was actually in a lecture at the time, and I had called her about 5 times. And she was sitting in the lecture theatre thinking, oh no, who's passed away? When you get the 5 calls. So I said, oh Casey, we've made it to the next round of auditions for MasterChef. So we were obviously buzzing, really excited. We called our mum, and she was like, oh, I'm in Farmers, I'm going to get you a pressure cooker, I'm going to, like all the things that you need for, to practice.
Culinary success.
Culinary success.
Yes.
And then we called our dad, and he said, there's no way you're going on that show. He said, if you want to be a chef, you get in the kitchen, you study, and you do it properly. None of this lottery ticket reality TV business. I think what happened was he you know when people go on talent shows and they can't sing and their whānau are standing in the wings and you're looking at them going, how could you let them embarrass themselves on national television? And I think that's what was flashing in my dad's head. Obviously, we didn't listen to our dad and carried on anyway, so it was about a month from finding out that we had made it onto the show to actually flying off to Auckland to cook for the judges, and we had a really intensive study program.
Yeah, so what we did is we got, you know, the pictures with the dotted lines of the meat and they have the different cuts, so we got all of those pictures and we wrote down all different dishes we could cook with each cuts of the meat. We knew we had to do a main and a main and a dessert for our audition dish, so we practiced that dish at least twice a day, like nearly every single day up into the lead up, so we knew no matter what happened in that kitchen, we'd know our dish so well we could adjust it or we could change or we could make it work. We emailed asking how many elements were on there, so we practiced in the same kind of situation that we thought we'd be auditioning in. We had flashcards with countries and different flavours, and yeah, and I think for us, because especially with our dad being that person of reason, we knew if we're going to go in, we've got to do it right and make sure we don't, embarrass the whānau.
Exactly.
And so we went on the show.
So this was us. I was 24 when when we were in the MasterChef house. Casey was 23.
I know, I'm 32 now.
Wow.
Wow, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Look at those two.
That's when I had the cool shaved hair,
Yeah.
And so we went on MasterChef, and from really early on, even from our audition dish, we did a cream power ravioli and a salted caramel fondant. So early on, we knew that being Māori and being where we're from and having identity within our food, that was our superpower. And it was really interesting because as the show progressed, people kept referring to us as the underdogs. But in the house, we felt like we were the ones to beat, we didn't understand that at all. And so we just basically had our head down, our bum up, and we were just fully focused on the competition. And we wanted to create dishes where if the judges were blindfolded and they tried our dishes, they would know that we had cooked them because there was so much of our culture wrapped up in these plates of food. And it was just the shining beam of light for us to say we're on the right track and this is what we're meant to be doing, creating kai and showcasing what Māori food can be. It was really important to us.
Yeah, so so all through that we went through the competition, it went really well, and then we ended up winning MasterChef, of course.
Well, what happened was we lived in the MasterChef house for 3 months away from everybody. We weren't allowed to see anybody, and then it was 3 months until it actually was edited and came on television, and then it was on TV for 3 months. So we had known for a very long time that we were the winners.
Yeah, we knew for 6 months. We were the winners, right?
Yeah, we did.
6 months.
6 months. So Casey went back to her job at Max, the clothing store in Bayfair, and she was folding clothing, and she was thinking, I won MasterChef, but you can't tell anybody. And one of the coolest things that happened was because our whānau, they were allowed to come in, and when you finish and your whānau comes in the doors and everyone cheers and you're like, oh my gosh. So Dad knew we had won, so we went down to the marae in Maketu down at for Koe Kaipapa, or we were actually in Rangiuru in the wharekai, and we set up all these screens and the projectors so the whole community could come down and watch the finale.
And I remember we set up all of these seats, and I remember saying to Kate, and I was like, oh, I hope some people show up. Because we'd got all these projectors and this whole thing for the community to watch.
And then I will just show you a little clip that somebody took in the crowd when we actually won the competition.
Not the best quality, but hopefully you can see the wairua in it. I don't know if you can hear it.
Oh, the sound. He's basically breaking down the dish. It was packed. It was packed. It was crazy. It was, honestly, it was an amazing evening, and we were so grateful that our community showed up for us. And I think one of the lasting things that happened were when we won, Stacey and Scotty, they messaged us and they said, congratulations girls, but just so you know, when you're a Māori on TV, you don't just represent yourselves, you represent your community where you come from, your whānau, your hapu, your iwi, you know, and that's like in Māoridom in general, you know, everyone's looking at you, and that's just what happens when you're a Māori. You're not an individual, you represent a whole bunch of people. And that's advice that we've carried with us for our entire career. So that was us. That was the night that we had won MasterChef. And they don't give you any media training or anything. They kind of just throw you out into the world and you have to be the winners. And so one of the things that you win is a cookbook deal. And so in the 3 months that we were waiting for the rest of the country to find out that we had won MasterChef, we were looking at this cookbook contract that we were sent. And we're emailing backwards and forwards with the production crew saying, oh, you know, like we want this photographer and we want this size and hardcover and 2 ribbons and glossy pages. And he emails back being like, who do you think you are? You know, you're the 5th winners. This deal is good enough for everybody else. It should be good enough for you. And it was at that point that our dad turned around and said, you should just do the book yourselves. And so he had basically gone from saying, don't go on MasterChef, to now telling us to self-publish this cookbook.
It was like a revelation. Once we had won, our dad was looking at us and he said, you can do whatever you want.
Believe in yourselves, you know, like, follow your dreams.
Follow your dreams. He's like, you know, we need to tell kids to follow their passion.
Exactly. And so, we sort of had settled on the fact that we wanted to do our own cookbook deal, and we emailed the director of the show, and he's swearing down the phone at me on the other end. Like,
I actually had to step out of the room because I think for me, like, I don't like conflict at the best of times, and I had already this like, oh, are we doing the right thing? Like, you know, those doubts, and then to hear him going at, you know, at Karina telling you, who do you think you are? Why can't, you know, it was a thing.
It was. But anyway, we weren't contractually obligated to do the book, so we just did it ourselves anyway. So we started on this journey of creating our dream cookbook, and there were a lot of learning processes, you know, like I remember, because we got it printed in China. Unfortunately, it was too expensive to do in New Zealand. But they called me on like a Friday evening, and they said, oh, what colour do you want the heads and tails to be? And I said, oh, I just need to discuss this with my business partner. I'll call you back soon. And I had to Google what heads and tails meant on a book. I had no idea. But yeah, we had a pretty clear vision of what we wanted the book to feel and look like, and we had recipes from our aunties and our you know, and our nan and our koro and people that we really love. So we wanted it to be exactly how we envisaged it. So this is a photo of our parents' house in Maki. It's really hard. It's difficult. You don't know what you're doing. You know, be careful you don't fall on your face, blah, 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 you know, the things they tell you as Māori a lot of the time. But we carried on, and we did a 64-stop book tour from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South Island. Our parents drove us in different parts of the country. People showed out. We had a book launch up at Skyline at Rotorua, and a lot of people in this room tonight were there to support us, so tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. And after the first week of the book being on sale, it went straight to #1 on the New Zealand bestsellers list. But the best part was that this director texted us and said, you were right. And then what had happened actually, when we were sort of like negotiating the book deal, he called us and he said, look, okay, I don't want to go through these negotiations anymore. I've got a deal for you. We'll let you self-publish your book, but we want the right to make a TV show with you two on it. And the premise for the show is that we'll travel to a different country every episode. So we go, okay, so we get to publish our book and we get to travel around, get paid to travel around the world. And he said, yes. And then we said, we'll think about it. And we hung up the phone and high-fived each other. It was amazing. And so we did 2 seasons of those shows. Actually, the director of our second season is just in the room, Nick. She was amazing. The second season was the best season in my opinion, because we got to hang out with like more Māori, because they hired a Māori director, which was like the best.
Yeah. Oh, you're actually skipping ahead, Karina. So,
that sounds about right.
Yeah. So while we were actually, I think we had started filming the show, so we're in the process of, the book had been made, it had been out for a while, and then we got an email from the World Cookbook Awards, the Gourmand World Cookbook Awards, and they had emailed us to let us know that we were finalists in the section for Best TV Cookbook in the World. And
Rick Stein was in our category.
yeah, and Rick Stein was in our category, and so the awards were in China, so we're like, oh, our book's in, let's go over to these awards. And so Kat and I, went over with our self-published book to these World Cookbook Awards, and we actually ended up winning the best TV cookbook in the world with our first cookbook. Yeah.
And then our second cookbook, Hungry, we got a Lifetime Achievement Award for like doing 2 books. So I was like, I can retire now, whatever.
Yeah, so I think those were, obviously, when you're on the right path, like these tohu pop up and say, hey, you know what, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was awesome. And I think that was like a kind of culmination of like that risk, the hard mahi we put in to make that a reality.
And a lot of support as well. Yeah. And then so since then, we've travelled and eaten in a lot of different places. And Casey's actually got like a little list of some of the places we've been to on our journey so far since winning MasterChef.
Yeah, so since winning MasterChef, we've been to the USA, France, Sweden, Samoa, Indonesia, Australia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Germany, Denmark, Chile, India, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, Italy, New Caledonia, Peru, Argentina, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Malaysia, Fiji, Thailand, Ireland, China, and Singapore.
Yeah. While still living in Maketu, might I add.
In between. And I think for us, what we love about food is that everybody eats all around the world, so there's that common connection. And for us, through a plate of a food, you can see the history of a place, you can see who's been there, has that place been colonised, what the landscape is like. Through a plate of food, you can see so much, and that also tells its own stories, and that's something that we've definitely picked up and know that's an important part of how we should develop dishes and look at food. It's part of that whole storytelling process.
There's actually in this middle, there's this middle photo here. I'm with this amazing woman who lived in, like, just on the border of North Korea and South Korea. And I went up and I was making kimchi. And I started crying. And I'm going, oh my gosh. And then the director's going, why is she crying over fermented cabbage, But it was because we'd flown all the way across the world and we were learning about these, traditional dishes in Korea. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even know enough about my own culture and our own kai that we have grown up with and that we should know more about. And it was at that point that Casey and I realised that there was a lot of mahi that we had to do back home with kai. And so we came back and we, as a culmination of all of our colour, Casey and I spend all of our money on food. No joke, we plan trips based on restaurants we want to go to. We'll change flights if we can't get a booking till later, and we'll push our flight back if we can't get a restaurant booking until later. And just from all of those culinary experiences, we came back and we created this 9-course degustation dinner telling the story of the separation of Rangi and Papa. And each of the courses told a different part of that story. There were only 30 guests, and we trained up local girls from high school. So I was the oldest in the group at 29, and all of the girls were high school students. Most of them had never worked in hospitality before, never done waitressing, and we were serving, people who were used to eating in that style. And to be able to take other people on the journey with you was one of the most fulfilling things that we've done. And to see their faces, when they're putting all this kai down in front of people and the pride that they had, it was a real highlight of our careers for us so far. So it was funny because, you can play the clip. I'll talk over the top because the sound's obviously not going that well. It was really interesting because we got Scotty Morrison to do the voiceover telling the story, but Stacey booked it into his schedule and he didn't really know what it was. And then we invited him to one of the dinners in Tamaki Makaurau, and his voice starts playing and he can't even remember recording the thing. And then afterwards he's going, oh, honestly, if you had told me what it was for, I would have done a much better job. There's lots of places I could have been a little bit more enthusiastic or, like a little bit more impactful.
But it was amazing regardless.
Yeah, he did a good job. So this is what it sort of looked like, and we projected like videos onto the roof, and the lights changed with the courses and the music changed with the courses. And it was honestly such a cool dinner. We should set it up here in Te Puya, I reckon. That'd be awesome. Just putting it out there, And so that was like a real highlight of our career. But after that, Casey and I realised that there was this piece missing in our puzzle, and that was Te Reo Māori. Our mother was a Māori lecturer at Te Tohu Paitahi for 11 years. But growing up, it was just a different time, and we just weren't interested, unfortunately.
We didn't understand the value, and it wasn't until we went through this, and then even throughout our whole career, it was always this thing where you're sitting there like, you go on TV, do interviews, and everyone, you're this a Māori, right? And then having this feeling of inadequacy because you didn't have that other piece, which I think for us, the more we went and learned, from different people around the world, we were like, man, we need to do some mahi, this isn't right.
So in 2019, we took a year off and we went to Te Tohu Paitahi. So they set up a new campus in Tauranga, and it was Monday to Friday, 9 to 3, every day learning Te Reo Māori, and it was one of the best years of our life. And we came over to Rotorua on Monday nights to Mōtiatia. We went to all the wānanga we could, and we basically just immersed ourselves in as much Māori as we could, really. And it's filtered through to our mahi now. We still cook and we travel and we do pop-up dinners, and we have just started going back overseas again for mahi. But having the reo was something that just made us stand a little bit taller and feel a little bit more reassured within ourselves. And it was a really important step for us as people.
And I think it was an important part of that extension of storytelling through Kai. For us, we could tell, it had another layer of authenticity to the story we were trying to tell. And it's a good feeling.
So, when you stand up here, with a path that's already been laid before you from all of those amazing, authors that have come before us, we just think, what can our koha be back to the world? So our next cookbook, this is the first time we're working with a publisher, so we're going back, we're working with Huia Publishing, and we're going to release our third book, and it's going to be completely in Te Reo Māori. So we just have to figure out Māori words for like consommes and spherification and all those types of things, which has been a really interesting ride.
Yeah.
But we're really looking forward to this next book, and no doubt we'll have backlash, from people who think, why is it going to be in Māori, we're not going to understand it. But for us, we want to, give this book to everybody who's made our careers possible. And also Casey's had a baby.
And I think, especially for him, I think to have that taonga to leave to him, to everyone else. And I think what's important for us, we talked about self-publishing, and then the decision to go to Huia Publishers was because with this book being in Te Reo Māori, we want it to be the best book we can make and have the right support to make sure we're doing the best job we can do. We knew that was the right decision to do that. We've got to get it right for him.
Exactly. So that's sort of where we are now today. We are still really grateful to everybody who's helped us along our way. It hasn't just been Casey and I, it's been a whole community who have raised us and supported us along the way. So tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa, kāre aku kupu, kia tino mohi atu kia koutou, tō māua aroha, tō māua whakaro nui kia koutou, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Haiwa. I'd just like to acknowledge everyone that's come here today, tēnā koutou, with this mihi, with this kupu from our group, Tūhurangi Ngāti Wāhia. You know, it's a funny thing, this thing called kupu. We've been part of kupu mai te timatanga o te ao, from the beginning of the world. So you had reference to Rangi and Papa. We believe one of the first kupus came about when our atua gathered together to wānanga what they were going to do with Rangi and Papa. And then they were squashed and they were moaning and they were great, like men always do. And they decided they would come together, and they had, was only the beginning of the kupu, was beginning of wānanga. And they gathered together to wānanga and they plotted the separation of Rangi and Papa. So since that time we've had kupu. But our group Tūhurangi, we started with our song Haere Mai Tūhurangi, because Tūhurangi Ngāti Wāhia have been sharing kupu for 200 years since the beginning of tourism. Our tribe has, you laugh, we began tourism in Aotearoa, honestly. We began tourism in Aotearoa as people came to see the sights of this new land, New Zealand, and in particular, the spectacular pink and white terraces. They came and we played host for them, or our tūpuna played host for them. And so our song, Haere Mai Tūhurangi, reminds us of that legacy of entertaining and spreading our kupu through song. So we've done that until it started in Tarawera, until the eruption. We moved to Whakariwarewa, and so our song Haere Mai Tuharangi is reminding people to come and spend time with us and for us to uphold our legacy. We say, kei hea rā koe he koro. Where are you? Koro Mita Taupapoki, who started, who was such a character in terms of sharing kupu, sharing his whole being really with the people that came to visit this area. He started performing arts with his cousins, Maggie Papakura and Auntie Bella Papakura, and our next song has been written by Bella Papakura. She was a woman who could tell the words. She could tell stories. We told stories about everything, but Bella, she told a story about her secret love. So we could tell Mills and Boone writers. Maggie Papakura was one of those. So she told, in this song, in this poi, she wrote about her secret love from Tuhoi, who came to visit Rotorua town, and there they would gather together in the secret romance. So without any further ado, we all got a poi, wahine mā, let's do Pākete Whero. Can you hear her heartbeat as her lover came down from Ruatahuna, came to Rotorua, to the tiriti o Hinimoa? And she was lucky because she would wear his red scarf that he had gifted her, and that was a symbol that we still wear today. Awe! Kia ora. Tumai. Of course, there are many stories told, but one that we all share is about our tūpuna tamata kapua. This haka was written about tamata kapua because here we are, the descendants of tamata kapua, Ngāuri o Te Arawa Waka. Before we conclude, I would just like to acknowledge and thank our Mayor, Maraikura, Stevie, because she is another woman that has allowed the kupu of our people to be represented in Rotorua. And with our lakefront, we're telling more of our stories with the carved pose. So nā mihi rā kia koe Stevie, o ti rā te kaunihira, koutou katoa, anei tō tātou haka. So here's Tūharangi Ngāti Wāhia acknowledging you all. No mai hara mai ki Rotorua. Welcome to the call of welcome. Hale! Me hui hui, let's gather together. Whereabouts? Here in Rotorua. Arahia. And after it's all said and done, what is my job here? After all, you remove all the words, my job here is to entertain you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.